Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this new episode of Women Leading Boldly. I'm thrilled today to welcome Kirsteen Williamson-Guinn. So I hope I've said that right. Okay, thank you. It's always a little bit of stress with the last names, but hey, we'll just go with it. So Kirsteen is an experienced senior leader with 15 years at director level in a large corporation. She is the founder of Elevate Women and the author of Unshakable Confidence, Your Blueprint. I'm thrilled to have her on because she specializes in helping female leaders build unshakable confidence, which is something that we all need and most people struggle with. So that they can speak up, step up, and stand out in their career. She has a beautiful track record of helping female leaders achieve increased visibility, enhanced leadership, career advancement, and she just brings a wealth of experience in empowering women to excel, especially in male-dominated industries. And I love the mission of her company. It's to have simply more successful and confident senior females in positions of power. And that is why I wanted to have her on. I think we both have so much in common in what we want to bring to this world. So Kirsteen, thank you again for being here. And before we dive into the topic, tell me a little bit about yourself and why participating in this summit was important to you.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, Karen. I'm thrilled to be here. I think when your business is called Elevate Women, you kind of get a sense of what I'm about. And you mentioned that I'm on a mission to see more successful, confident women in positions of power. I think the world truly needs that. I think International Women's Day is a moment to amplify lots of female voices. And of course, I would want to be part of that. But this is my mission all year round.
Okay. I think just the amplification I think it's a perfect opportunity to simply give more visibility, give more voice, remind everybody, especially I think with what's going on in the world right now, where there are questions around leadership and women in leadership and just leadership styles in general. I think it's a very important moment. So
Agreed.
Thank you. All right. So if we dive in, what are the biggest mistakes that you see female leaders make when it comes to speaking up, stepping up, and standing out in their career?
There's a few, and I'm speaking about things that I see as part of, I host virtual roundtables every fortnight with senior females, but I'm also speaking to mistakes I made myself, which when you come out of a career, you start to see things slightly differently. So I think I'll start with this overworking that seems to be very common, especially with women, and often it's because we feel like we need to compensate for something, either having to pick children up or whatever it is. If we're not always around, we feel like we need to overwork, overplease, overgive. And the problem with that when it comes to elevating our career is that we're so stuck in the doing that we might be missing those opportunities to create exposure for ourselves. Or the other thing that can happen is that our brand becomes someone who's a safe pair of hands or a great team player. And of course, they're great things to be said about someone. However, if you're looking to elevate your career and maybe step into a chief or C-suite position, those two labels aren't necessarily helpful. And so what we need to be doing is prioritizing the things that are going to help elevate us the way that we want to be elevated and create those exposure opportunities. So it's about being clear about how we want to be seen. And visibility sometimes we resist that visibility, but it's massively important. If you're ambitious, you need to be seen in a certain way and by certain people, and being conscious and intentional around that is so important. But of course, if you're so busy doing all those things, you might miss those opportunities. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that I see, and this was absolutely me, is when you're so busy doing everything, and I don't mean just work, we've all got priorities and responsibilities outside of work. What tends to happen is we become reactive to everybody else's stuff, and we're not creating the things that we really want for ourselves. And I remember trying to figure out what on earth I wanted, and I didn't know the answer because I'd never stopped long enough to actually think about it. And it still is one of the most difficult questions to answer. And then I think the other thing that is challenging for us women at times, and you've definitely spoken to this, is the network that we have. And so often, and again, my own experience, my network was internal to the company I worked for. And studies show that if your network is purely internal, you are less likely to leave that company, even if you're unhappy. So generally speaking, and studies will show this, women are more happenstance in their approach to networking, whereas men are probably a bit more strategic. And of course, we know the difference between a male network and a women network in terms of power. So for women, we need to be really intentional, really clear about who we want in our network, and go do it, be it, create it, whatever that looks like.
And so how do you think, because I want to come back 1 second to the visibility question, which is, and then the networking, but for visibility and exposure, why do you think it's so hard for women to work on their visibility? Like, what inherently or what, like, deep down do you think is holding them back from doing that?
It's funny that you asked that. I've had so many conversations with women who have been looking to step up in their career in some way. So they know they need to be seen, yet they don't want to be seen. Because it's that judgment. How are people going to view me? And I had this battle myself when I launched my business, because I would be very happy not to be on camera, not to be putting myself out there as much as I do. I've had to get over that fear of judgment. And so I think sometimes there is that fear of, how will I be seen? Will it go against me? I also think it plays into the fact that we are often disconnected from what we want and who we are. So we're not able to clearly articulate what we're bringing to things. And we don't actually see the value that we bring truly, and that other people see in us, but haven't taken the time to see it for ourselves. So I think that can stop us from being able to confidently step into visibility, whatever that looks like.
And I think that I love your point about judgment, because, and this is what I tell all my clients, people are going to judge. That is the human brain. That is the normal reaction of the brain. And people are going to judge, but also we judge.
Yeah.
And we judge ourselves and we judge circumstances. And I think that, and I'd love your opinion on this, is one, recognizing it, that you need to learn to live with it. But so when it comes from others, there's nothing that you can do. You can try to influence, I think, judgment, but ultimately you have no idea what other people are thinking. But working on how you see yourself and treating yourself with more empathy and judging yourself less, I find goes a very long way in being able to put yourself out there and work on things like visibility or networking. What would you agree with that? Do you have a different opinion?
I definitely agree with that. I think our self-concept is a big part of what I work with my clients on, because we don't really see ourselves in all of our brilliance. So I definitely agree with that. For me, the thing that helped me become more visible was my coach at the very beginning giving me some real tough love, and because I didn't want to go on video. And she said to me, if you help one person with your video, is that worth all the judgment that might come with it? And I, after a minute, thought, yes, it is. And so I've got this mindset that my mission is way more important than someone else's judgment of me. And that's what helps me sit here on camera and do the things that feel uncomfortable. And we have to build a capacity to deal with discomfort, because otherwise we're not going to achieve half of the things that we're capable of. So it's a mindset of, this is going to be uncomfortable and someone is probably going to judge me, and actually I'm okay because this is why I'm doing it and this is what's important to me. So everyone else can do what they like.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
No, I think that is a skill, getting uncomfortable and learning to be uncomfortable. I think it becomes fuel for success. When you can actually, because you're going to have to do uncomfortable things all the time. You're not going to know how to do everything in a job or if you're starting a business, and learning to be uncomfortable and getting comfortable with discomfort, I think will just take you so far. And in the summit, I am going to be interviewing a 23-year-old who has started 3 businesses already. And that is one of the things that she, I think, is going to talk about, because I know it's something dear to her heart, is just getting used to that feeling. Because it does get easier. I think it gets easier. I don't know if you, with your experience, has it gotten easier being on camera?
It has. I mean, I think I tolerate it now. and just to your point around discomfort of when we're doing new things, for years I needed to know all the answers. And so many of us, and I experience this a lot with women who come to me because they've just got a new role or whatever. If we don't know the answers, we feel uncomfortable and like we should know the answers. And I think one of the most important shifts that we can make is to get comfortable in the questions. Because actually we can have way more impact when we allow our curiosity to run rather than our judgment, and start to unlock some quite, interesting things, because we've become comfortable with not having the answers.
Yeah. No, I love that. Curiosity over judgment is a great way to look at it. Okay. And I wanted to come back also on something else you said about we don't see our value. Women have a hard time seeing their value. How do you recommend working on that? And how do you work on that, either with yourself or with clients? Are there any strategies that you could share?
One of the things that I generally do is the Strengths Finder assessment.
Okay.
Because a lot of the time we struggle to actually articulate the strengths that we have, and because often we take them for granted. And so what I like to do is have that done, because that's like tangible. It's from a different source, so it becomes a bit more believable to start with. And then it's about being able to look back at how you've moved forward with something, how you've navigated challenges, and really reflect on where you've come from and what you've achieved. Because when you do that, you can pull out the qualities, the strengths that each individual has, and importantly, the impact that can be created because of that.
And could you maybe, for our listeners, not everybody knows what Strengths Finder is. Could you maybe just summarize it for those who maybe have never heard of it or who have never been exposed to it?
So it's a book, and I will share the link, if you like, at the end. It's Gallup's Strengths Finder, and it looks at 4 themes of different ways that we operate and breaks down various different strengths within the themes. And so what you can then do is look at, okay, what strengths do I have that I'm leveraging now? What strengths do I have that maybe I'm not leveraging? And is there something that I could do with working on that is going to elevate my performance or my results? And that's really what confidence is. It's knowing what you're good at and being able to work on the areas for growth that we all have without feeling any sort of shame about it.
Okay.
So when you buy the book, which, well, because I can't remember exactly what it's called, you get a link to do a 40-minute strengths assessment, which will then highlight your top 5 strengths.
Okay. All right.
So I always start there.
All right. So we will link that. And why do you think, and you've already touched on it, but why do you think looking at that is so important? If you could maybe just give us an example of one person that you've worked with, or one concrete example that looking at that information and looking at what they learned about themselves, how they use that to develop their career.
So why is it so important? First of all, because we are very good at finding our flaws. And often we can go into interviews armed with the gaps that we have or something that didn't go well. Mm-hmm. So having these tangible strengths helps us a bit more confidently talk about what we bring. I remember working with a client who was struggling to get her team on board and delivering what they needed to be delivering in a timely way. We did her strengths, and her number one strength was communication. She just wasn't leveraging it. So then you start to look at, okay, let's look at why this is a key strength for you. What is it that you're good at? And how do you bring that into the messaging that you have with your team, with your leaders, with your stakeholders, and create a communication plan? And that's what we did. And then everything changed. It's sometimes these things are so natural to us that we forget they're even there. It was so bizarre.
Okay. All right. So great example. Thank you. So what also just would like to shift a little and talk about growth mindset. Mm-hmm. And because we started to touch on it, and because a lot of this, it's based on what we think about ourselves. Yep. And like you said, we tend to think of the negative or see where our, the gaps are. Why is a growth mindset so important, and especially for women?
A growth mindset is about knowing that there is an opportunity to improve. And for some of us women, and this is a generalization because it's important for men too, and I'll explain why I'll come back to that in a second. But many of us are perfectionists, and we will let perfection delay us moving forward. Many of us are afraid of failure. And again, we won't go for a promotion in case we can't do it. And so what a growth mindset does is it takes you out of that fixed idea of who you are and allows you to focus on the growth rather than just an outcome. And that is so, so important. And the other reason that I bring this in to the work I do with my clients is because studies show that women and girls are 80% more likely to make shame-based meaning about themselves in the event of setbacks and failures. So we will make it mean something about us rather than what we did. And so shifting out of that fixed mindset and into a growth mindset about how can we just take one step forward, or just what can we do just to improve our skills in some way, rather than feeling embarrassed or frustrated about where we are and being stuck there.
Okay. And so do you think, because you worked, if I understood correctly, also in an industry with a lot of men, male dominated.
Yes.
What are some of the differences that you saw, or did you see, when it came to growth mindset between men and women? Or do you have an experience that shows something different? Do men just not talk about it? Or do they seriously just kind of push on and don't even think about it? Like, how do they see, based on your experience, a growth mindset?
I think there's a few things that you said there. So I think sometimes men don't talk about it. And if you take feelings, imposter feelings, for example, we often think that that's something that's more relevant for women or more prevalent in women. And that's not true. It's just that we tend to be a bit more, we may focus on it a bit more. It may be more of a reason to stop than it is for men. And the reason I say that is when I launched my business, one of the first people in my inbox was a male peer who said he felt like an imposter. And I would never have dreamt that in a million years that he felt like that. If it had been a female peer, I would have been, of course. You know, we get that. But it's interesting, isn't it? So for a fixed mindset for men, it's really difficult because I think I became more like them in my career because I had to. And I had to. So the majority of my success in my career was based on masculine energy, getting things done, keeping moving, pushing, deadlines, all those things. And I think part of the work I've done on myself is because I didn't want to bring that into my business, and I wanted to be more in touch with my feminine, and then realizing that brings judgment and hesitation and overthinking sometimes. And so this growth mindset is critical if I'm going to keep progressing and not being delayed by those things.
And do you feel that things have shifted and I want to say shifted and improved for the better? Because growth mindset, it's something now that we've been talking about for many years. And I think it's still a topic. I honestly do. But do you see improvement, or do you still think it's an important issue for a lot of people?
I still think it's an important issue. And I think people think they're one or the other. And there's a lot of blind spots in that, because actually we all have both. And it's about being able to understand what might activate a fixed mindset for us. And it's different for everybody. And it's different in different stages of life transition. It's kind of ever moving, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it can also vary work versus personal or even hobbies. I think that it definitely shows up in different ways and in different circumstances also, depending at work. So, okay. Still an important topic. And that also for people who are not aware, I will also link the book, which I think is called Mindset. From Carol Dweck. I'll also link that in the show notes.
Great book.
Yeah. Okay. And I would also like to hear about your system for building what you call unshakable confidence. Tell me about that.
So I created this for me actually because this was part of my shift from corporate. I had some personal experience with both of my parents, their health. So my dad was terminally ill, my mum had dementia. I was watching both of them fade in very different ways, and I started to fade. I started to lose my confidence because I felt out of control. I was. And so because I'd been training as a health coach, I started to create a program for myself so that I could get through it, because I didn't want to be signed off work. I didn't know if I'd ever get back to work if I stopped. You know, that feeling, if you stop, will you get back up? And that terrified me. So this is a holistic approach to confidence, and it's my spirit method. So we always start with the strengthening of self-concept, because how you see yourself, how you think about yourself, how you talk to yourself is going to help you or hinder you. So that's where we always start. We then create a compelling vision and make sure that we have clear priorities. And this is about stepping into creation rather than being in reaction. And we're often so busy that that's where we are. We're in reaction to everything else. Then it's about integrating self-care and learning how to relax. And for me, I didn't have any self-care when I was at my most stressed. I was getting through the week on cappuccinos, wine, terrible food, because I didn't stop. And I didn't realise there is a correlation between self-care and self-confidence. So this is a really important thing. And being calm. If you can create calmness for yourself, you can make better decisions, you can think clearer. You just bring a better version of you to whatever you're doing. And so that's something that we don't always spend time creating for ourselves. So that's really important. Then we release those limiting beliefs. We all have beliefs that hold us back, and we start to name them and change them, because that's really important too. Then we ignite our power, and that's by breaking through some inner barriers. So the three main ways, and this is from Claire Zammit from Feminine Power, Evolving Wisdom. She did a PhD with thousands of successful females. And the main three ways we block our power is repetition of old habits, stories and behaviours, being disconnected from our intuition or all of ourselves, and isolating, this idea that we need to do everything ourselves. So part of my work is to help people see what these barriers are, because often we don't even know they're there, and then disrupt that. And then the T in spirit is about thriving in alignment. So moving forward with our thoughts, our habits and our behaviours in alignment with the thing we're looking to create. And that's my method.
Okay. No, I think it's fascinating because you've brought in your own experience and, you know, a lot of work also that's based on research. So I think it's 100% relevant. I completely resonated with a couple points that I want to come back on. Tell us a little bit about the correlation between confidence and self-care.
Well, I mean, it's the simple stuff. So for me now, if I eat well and I'm hydrated, I feel better about myself. If I don't, there's shame. That's, you know, we don't want to bring shame to the table, but that's kind of the crudest way. If I'm focused on my mindset and my body and taking care of it and creating that calmness, then you're going to experience a better version of me than the person that is running around, hasn't taken care of herself at all. She might look like she's got it all together, but what's going on internally is very different. And that was me.
Okay.
So you're kind of, when you're running around and you look like you've got it all together, it's not really you. So it's hard to be confident if you know it's a cover.
Yeah, it's like there's some kind of cognitive dissonance between what you're showing and what you're actually living inside. And I think that it's that cover can only last for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that living that constant internal kind of struggle can be very challenging for women.
Yeah.
And I can only, my health, and this is a tip that I tell everybody, this is my health and wellness comes first. It is the first thing I put on my agenda. And then all of the other work stuff and other people come second. Yeah. But I think that taking care of our health, our sleep, our food, fresh air is just so important, because so many women have put themselves second or third or fourth on the list for so long. Yep. And you just can't pour from an empty cup, is the way that I like to look at it. So I can only 100% support that. And the other point I would love to talk a little bit about is igniting your power. So why is that an important step in your process?
It's the hidden barriers that we have. It's the things that we do that we don't see ourselves doing. And so it could be the way we react to a challenge. It could be, we've all got patterns. One of my patterns was that I had to finish everything. And by the time I'd got it finished, it was irrelevant, unnecessary, out of date. But I still had this thing that I had to do it. And so now I've gone the other way, which is I like to start lots of things and I might not finish them. And so these things could really hinder us. It could be that for some people, they're asked to step up in some way, and they go and hide. They put someone else forward instead. Or it could be that they have a pattern of diminishing themselves, or a pattern of people pleasing rather than being really honest and direct. And that the source of that is that they can often feel like, well, no one's going to listen to me. And so what I do is it's easier to see the pattern. It's easier to see the behavior, and then you can get underneath what's the story behind that, and let's disrupt that story because it's not helping. Yeah.
And that comes back also to your self-concept.
Yeah.
Which is
Totally.
Your first point. It's for me, I also like to see it as being, you kind of have to step into that person of your self-concept before you're completely ready.
Yes.
And there are ways to do that feel okay, that feel a little scary, but safe. But I think that, looking at how you see yourself, what you think about yourself and all those patterns, it's, if we aren't aware of that, then it's extremely difficult to change. So, okay, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your book and where we can find you. Let's see it.
My book.
Okay, Unshakable Confidence, Your Blueprint. Great. We'll put also the link in the show notes.
Thank you. So you can find that on Amazon.
Okay.
And what that is, so it's a very light version of my 12-week program. There are resources that you will find on the website that you get access to a resources page as part of the book that will help you go through some of these things and just start to move your confidence and understand where maybe a bit more attention is required.
Okay. And I would also like to encourage everyone, you also have a quiz.
Yes.
With regards to confidence. I've taken it. It literally takes 90 seconds, just like the website says, and you immediately get your results. And for me, I don't have a big issue with confidence, but it was still very interesting to see that, it's not at 100%, and there's always something that we can learn about ourselves. So I would encourage everyone to go take that. Great. Kirsteen, is there anything else that we haven't touched upon that you would really like to mention? Now is the time.
No, I'm just very grateful for our time together, and I hope that people get some value from our conversation.
Oh, I'm sure that they will. I have loved it. So thank you so much. And yeah, we'll link all of the books and all of also Kirsteen's resources in the show notes. Thank you, everyone.